Stanley Kubrick rarely placed a name or location inside a film without centuries of history hiding behind it. One of the most intriguing references appears quietly inside The Shining, in the enormous ballroom, where Jack Torrance eventually finds himself surrounded by tuxedos, champagne glasses, and smiling ghosts. Some people refer to this space as the Baal room, a name that opens a doorway into ancient religion, medieval demonology, and the psychology of people drawn toward power that feels older than themselves. Understanding that reference begins thousands of years before the Overlook Hotel ever existed. The word Baal originally meant Lord or Master in several ancient Semitic languages. It appeared across the Levant in cultures that depended heavily on seasonal rain and fertile land. Farmers waited for storms. Cities waited for crops. Entire populations watched the sky and prayed for clouds. In that world, the figure associated with thunder, rain, and seasonal renewal gained enormous cultural weight. Baal represented the force believed to bring storms that revived dry earth and filled rivers again. Yet Baal didn't appear primarily among village shrines and wandering folk cults. The worship connected strongly with royal courts and priestly elites who stood close to kings. Temples dedicated to Baal rose inside wealthy cities where priests interpreted omens and rulers announced that divine favor rested on their reign. The presence of the god near thrones and palaces strengthened the idea that leadership on earth reflected a cosmic hierarchy above it. That connection between sacred power and ruling classes shaped the image of Baal for centuries. The figure carried the aura of a deity connected with dominance, prestige, and the promise that those standing closest to the divine presence would receive reign, prosperity, and legitimacy. In ancient texts, Baal rides clouds, throws lightning, and speaks through thunder. The imagery places him above ordinary people, seated metaphorically in the sky like a monarch, whose voice shakes the land. When new religious traditions emerged across the Mediterranean world, older deities rarely disappeared entirely. Instead, they transformed in meaning. Many earlier gods became figures interpreted as demons within later theological systems. Baal underwent that transformation as Judaism and Christianity spread through Europe and the Middle East. By the medieval period, the name shifted slightly. Baal became Bale. That altered spelling appears most famously in the 17th century grimoire known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, specifically in the section called the Ars Goetia, a catalog describing 72 spirits believed to be summoned by ceremonial magicians. Within that text, Bale appears first in the hierarchy. The list begins with him. The placement suggests a symbolic starting point for the entire sequence of spirits. The Goetia describes Bale as a king who commands 66 legions of spirits. Illustrations often portray him with 3 heads, a man, a cat, and a toad. Each head speaks with a different voice. That strange imagery may appear grotesque on the surface, yet medieval occult scholars often used hybrid creatures to describe divided human impulses and shifting identities. One ability assigned to Bale stands out clearly. He grants invisibility. The term referred to someone literally vanishing into thin air. Occult writers usually described invisibility as the capacity to move through powerful circles without drawing unwanted attention. Influence occurring quietly behind closed doors. Presence concealed behind ceremony and appearance. The individual remains physically present while attention shifts somewhere else. That idea of unseen influence moves naturally toward Kubrick's world inside the Overlook Hotel. The ballroom scenes in The Shining present a place where Jack suddenly receives recognition and hospitality from figures dressed in expensive clothing from another era. The transformation occurs smoothly. A silent, empty hall fills with laughter and music. Tuxedos, polished glasses, and elegant conversations surround Jack, as though he stepped into a gathering reserved for a particular class of people. Nothing about the environment suggests disorder or hysteria. The ghosts speak carefully. Every movement looks deliberate and polished. The room carries the energy of a private gathering attended by individuals who believe they belong there. That atmosphere brings the ancient story of Baal and the medieval description of Bale closer to Kubrick's imagery. The figure associated with prestige and quiet influence becomes linked symbolically to the ballroom. full of smiling figures who seem perfectly comfortable in a world hidden from outsiders. Jack Torrance walks into that environment after days of frustration and humiliation. His writing stalls, his family irritates him. Isolation presses against his mind. When he enters the ballroom, the transformation feels immediate. The bartender Lloyd greets him politely, pouring drinks with professional grace. Jack suddenly receives attention he hasn't experienced anywhere else in the film. The room treats him like someone important. That moment echoes the ancient dynamics surrounding Baal worship. People standing near the sacred presence believed they had entered a circle reserved for those connected with divine power. Kubrick places Jack inside a similar environment where appearance, etiquette, and exclusivity replace the cold emptiness of the rest of the hotel. The deeper connection becomes clearer during Jack's conversation with Delbert Grady. Grady approaches him with the calm tone of a man discussing membership within a distinguished society. He doesn't threaten Jack. He simply explains that Jack has always belonged there. You've always been the caretaker. The sentence carries the feeling of a ceremonial declaration. Grady speaks as though Jack's identity has been recognized rather than created in that moment. The idea reaches backward through time, suggesting that Jack's presence inside the hotel reflects something older than the man himself. That idea aligns closely with Bale's description in the Goetia. The first king of spirits presides over a realm where influence extends quietly across generations. The spirit doesn't demand sudden dramatic belief. Instead, he occupies a position that continues across time while new individuals step forward to participate. Kubrick reinforces that sense of continuity throughout the film. Photographs line the walls of the Overlook. Wealthy guests from earlier decades smile into the camera. Businessmen, politicians, celebrities, military officers, and socialites appear frozen in celebration. The building becomes a gallery of people who once enjoyed status and recognition within its walls. And Jack eventually joins them. When the final photograph reveals him standing among party guests from 1921, the implication suggests that the caretaker role extends across decades like a lineage. Another face joins the crowd. Another individual absorbed into the long history of the hotel. The connection to Bale grows stronger when the idea of invisibility returns. The spirit described in the Goetia grants the ability to move unnoticed while shaping events quietly. The Overlook behaves in a similar way. The hotel rarely forces Jack to act. Instead, it provides hospitality, praise, and reassurance. Each conversation nudges him further into the role offered to him. Jack never disappears physically, yet his moral awareness fades gradually. The bartender offers drinks. Grady offers understanding. The ballroom offers belonging. With each step, Jack moves deeper into a world that rewards obedience and participation. The ancient story of Baal described a deity associated with storms that arrived suddenly across dry land. The medieval figure, Bale, presided over legions and offered unseen influence. Kubrick's ballroom gathers those ideas inside a cinematic space where a struggling man receives recognition from figures representing a long chain of wealth and prestige. Jack's attraction to that environment reveals something essential about his character. He wants significance. He wants acknowledgement that his presence means something larger than the frustration he experienced with Wendy and Danny. The ballroom provides that recognition instantly. In that sense, Jack's connection to Bale doesn't require literal demon worship. The symbolism operates through psychology and atmosphere. The ancient lord associated with prestige and thunder becomes a metaphor for the seductive feeling of entering a room where everyone treats you like you belong among powerful people. Kubrick stages the scene so that Jack never questions the invitation for long. He accepts the drink. He accepts the conversation. He accepts the identity offered to him. That acceptance creates the true horror of the film. The ghosts never force him. They simply welcome him into a place where the rules already exist, and the role of caretaker awaits anyone willing to step into it. The ancient name Baal evolved into Bale across centuries of religious interpretation. Yet the underlying idea remains similar. A figure representing dominance, prestige, and quiet influence stands at the beginning of a long chain of followers who keep the tradition alive. Inside the Overlook Hotel, Jack Torrance becomes the latest figure invited into that lineage. The smiling guests raise their glasses, the music plays, and the caretaker takes his place among them in the ballroom. What are your thoughts on the gold room, the ballroom, and the connection to Jack? Drop a comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the greatest movies ever made.